What is up, everybody? It's Joe from JLW Games coming at you with another cool video back in Planet Coaster in the one and only Time City. And sorry I got to this episode so late. I've actually had it for a while, but I've just been really busy the past couple days and didn't really get the opportunity to work on any videos or live streams. So it's kind of been a little later than I expected. But this was actually one of my favorite episodes in the Roman section. So I hope you guys enjoy. We're going to be really theming up this one section of the coaster a lot here. And pretty much we're going to be touching up and finishing the little bit of the trench, like tunnel kind of section here, which it's more of a trench, not a tunnel, I guess. But we're just going to finish theming it up. We're going to get the terrain all up against it as it should be, and we're going to really get everything themed up and I'm going to do a little bit of ruins here and add some foliage and trees and everything, and just kind of complete this area as a whole, and it'll look actually really good. So it's actually one of my favorite theming areas I've ever done on one of my coasters before. So I hope you guys enjoy it as well and think it's just as good as I do. So I think it's really good, and even though it's literally just for a turn and part of a loop, it's one of my favorites, and you're only going to see it for a few seconds. It's just that's just how theming works, you know. The train's only going to go by for a few seconds in this section, and you put so much time and effort for literally just a second or two of a POV. So, but if you theme your coaster well and all the way through, you know, it could be kind of different. You know, you could actually end up, you know, you're going to see theming throughout the entire ride, and that might be true for most of this ride. We're probably not gonna do it for the entire ride, but most of the ride you're gonna see a lot of theming elements. Obviously, the flyby launches are in the Colosseum, which still needs some work. You got this section right here, and then I'm just gonna have like a lot of ruins and a lot of cool stuff like that throughout the layout as well. So just kind of keep a lookout for that at the same time, and it will look really decent, really good. And yeah, so this takes up a lot of the time, of course, and this episode did get a little cut. I believe this is the episode that got cut a little bit short because it was I did have the game crash on me at the end, so but thankfully I didn't really lose much. I do place down a flat ride at the end of the episode and start working on it, but thankfully that's the only thing I lost, and it wasn't really much. All I did was place down a flat ride, create a queue line, or just, you know, I didn't theme it or anything, and then make a wall around it because it's over the water. So you'll see that in a little bit later, but I did rebuild that later, so it will be there, and actually there in a little bit extra detail. It will be there by the next episode. So really everything you're seeing here does end up being built for sure in the park itself. And yeah, so we get another ride in. We'll be getting another ride in towards the end of the episode and everything like that. So I hope you guys are enjoying, and look at this area. Like I was really pleased of how this was turning out, getting some rock work in there and some foliage, and just pleased of how it was turning out. And I'd like to hear what you guys think in the comment section down below of what you guys think of how this section has been turning out, or this area has turned out for this part of the ride. It's one of my favorites, and I hope it's will be one of your favorites as well. And this ride is going to be one of the more iconic rides within the park, I think, and we're hopefully going to keep it that way. So a park like this has to have a lot of theming throughout the rides and coasters, so it's very important to do all this stuff. And yes, it takes up some more time, but it's gonna be worth it. I just really yawned right there. That was a really good yawn. But anyways, so as for custom supporting, again, I think I've mentioned it before. I'm only going to be doing certain sections, as this ride is pretty low to the ground for most of it, or most of the ride. It doesn't get very tall. I don't even think it gets over 100 feet. And the in-game supports that are already in it actually do very well. I think this is the best custom generated supports that go in, and there's just a couple sections that look off that I will be custom supporting. I already custom supported the first big wave / overbank turn, and then the last inversion is another inversion that I kind of want to custom support. And I believe in this episode we custom support the 0G roll, the corkscrew, whichever you want to call it, at the beginning of the ride. And I had some issues trying to figure that one out just a little bit because of the connectors. There's not really any small pieces, and we'll get to that in just a little bit. But yeah, this area turned out really nice. You know, the rock and foliage work. And I wanted to make it look a little bit kind of ruins, not too ruined, but like a little bit ruins, because again, we're in the prime of the Roman days, so there's not going to be a whole lot of ruins, but in this particular, it's still going to be kind of old and kind of battered up because, again, we are in a Colosseum, and there's lots of fights that were held here, so there are a lot of battles and entertaining battles and everything like that. I'm still probably going to custom support the vertical loop as well, so just be aware of that. I love the vertical loops that they added in the game for this ride, and I think it was SLV, the more circular type loops, because those are actually more true to like the mock rides model and everything like that as well. They usually have more circular loops than teardrops. It's not like teardrops, but they still have the option of teardrop ones if you want to do those as well. So anyways, this area is pretty much complete in that section right there. So I wanted to do a little bit of terra painting here and get the ride and get that shape that I wanted in. So we're going to be doing a perimeter fence as well around the ride to start getting that a little bit more complete and more realistic because of stuff like that. So I wanted to put a little bit of a ruins section right here. Nothing too fancy here, but it's going to work out just fine for us. It's going to be, I decided to put a little rubble there and see how that would turn out. And it turned out alright. If we can blend it just right, it works just fine. So this is going to be kind of like a little, I don't know, a gazebo or something like that. Something pretty small and not much to it, but just to have a little bit of theming within the area. This is probably going to be the last bit of theming we'll do for the first part of the ride. The second part of the ride, we still have to add some stuff. But as for the first part of the ride, this is about all it's going to have, which is just fine by me. I think it looks pretty good. And that's pretty much it for this coaster's almost a completed state. We've almost completed it. We just got to work, of course, on the station queue line and all the pathway areas that going up to it, basically, and that's about it. And then, of course, some trees around the ride always is a nice touch as well. Trees, foliage, and rock work is definitely always a good touch for any kind of coaster, in my opinion. So just making it look beautiful and good, and it actually turned out really smooth in the POV. If you've been in the live sessions, you'd know that it's actually pretty smooth, and I'm pretty happy with how it turned out, and I didn't even use the 4-meter method. So I was pretty proud of this custom 0G roll. It's one of the best 0G rolls I've made. Or if you want to call it more of a corkscrew, you can. It's kind of in between. So this is where we get to custom supporting this element, and everything turned out great, except for trying to connect it to the track was always a little bit difficult because I had to find a smaller piece, and I'm not using the thick support beams here. So trying to find a support piece that was short enough and fits that was kind of impossible, so I actually went with the thicker piece, and it does kind of look a little out of place if you really take a look at it, but if you're not really looking at it much and just from a distance, it actually is, I think, just fine, because the auto-generated supports here were kind of weird, so I had to do something more like this. At first I was just like, I don't know if I really want to go with that, and then I tried a couple different other things, as you'll see here. I just kind of fiddle with it, and I realized that there's not really any better way to get this down, unless I wanted a really long piece just sticking out like that, which I didn't really want. So, because I thought it kind of looked out of place and kind of looked weird, in my opinion. So I wish they would have made some shorter support pieces, like some mini ones, so we could really kind of get the length that we wanted to. And then I tried to push the support back, and I was just like, no, that doesn't look great either. So I originally just go back to what I ended up doing the first time, because I thought it looked the greatest or the best out of all of them. So that's just kind of where I went with, because I was actually used kind of a reference photo of Time Traveler in a sense, and how it looks, and it doesn't have any back part actually going through, and I ended up making it going through just a little bit, and it's just a small thing that we're just gonna have to live with, but it doesn't look bad. It's just those pieces that are connecting are just so thick compared to the support beam, and that's not the most realistic. And if I come up with a solution later, I might change it, but for now we're just gonna have to live with it at the moment. So but it still doesn't look bad anyways, but we'll just have to live with it, you know. But it still turned out kind of pretty decent, I thought. So this is the section that's actually inspired a lot by Time Travelers, that twist and turn and then going straight into a 0G roll. That's actually what Time Traveler does, and it's kind of cool. So now we start getting into a bit of the perimeter fencing, and you know, every coaster has to have a perimeter fence, because you don't want anyone getting in the perimeter of the ride while it is operating. So that's something that we have to pay attention to. And if you want to make realistic parks, you do have to create some sort of perimeter for your ride, area that should not be entered while the ride is in motion. So we got to make sure we understand that and use a total what we're supposed to do. So anyways, also before I get into the next ride, we also go in and work on this shop area right here, the shop front, a little bit to kind of make it a little more pretty. And we actually end up connecting the two buildings together to create kind of a joined building as well. And of course I still want a sort of backstage area, you know, where you have the facade in the front and then you just have the backstage part of the building behind it, you know, kind of doing what it does. So anyways, I noticed that the Roman buildings aren't super detailed. You know, they have all these columns and everything, but there's not too much more than that, you know. So we're gonna try and keep it pretty simple with these buildings. So with that being said, we should be able to create these fairly easily and quickly, and that's why I think this section has become a little bit easier and faster to build, because there's not as much to do detail wise on all the buildings and areas. So it makes it just that much easier, I think. And over here I wanted to add another sort of statue or fountain of some sorts, just to kind of fill up this green area. So I decided to go put this fountain in here because I like this fountain a lot, and I ended up started to try and put a Pegasus. Didn't really care for it because it does kind of have a crappy draw distance, and I went with this statue. I know it's probably not very Roman, but I just needed some statues within this section. You know, I needed more statues. So, and this one particularly comes from the Theme Maker's Toolkit, and that's kind of the idea I wanted to go with. So anyways, I had to create a little bit more on this building as well, so it looks a little bit better supported anyways. But this is where we get into the next ride. It is actually going to be a Tilt-A-Whirl that I'm going to be theming up a lot. It's going to actually have a cover over the top of it, so it's going to have like a columns and everything holding up a dome and everything. It's not finished yet, but so we don't get much into it. But that's about it for this episode. I don't go far into this. We'll get that in the next episode. Have a great day, guys. Even cooler tomorrow. Make sure you comment, like, and subscribe for more amazing content like this. And I'll see you guys in the next episode. Thanks, and goodbye.